out of slavery into their promised inheritance. And they make it to the Red Sea and they face a crisis. And so we looked last week at how that crisis was really an opportunity that then resulted in a gift because they walked through the middle of it. Literally, they walked through the middle of the Red Sea. That's what we talked about last week. But there's a verse in there that we looked at last week, but I want to draw your attention to this week. If you have a Bible, the second book in the Bible is Exodus. And we're going to be in chapter 14. And I've also printed a number of these verses on your note sheet. I don't usually do that, but today, to save some time, I did. But if you'd like to look it up for yourself, it's there for you in one of those red Bibles. I'm going to be looking at Exodus 14, 10 through 12. And so if you're there in the Bible or if you got it on your note sheet, would you just follow along as I read aloud? They're standing by the Red Sea, and it says, "As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, 'Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert.'" Now, friends, you gotta listen to this. You gotta recognize something here. Number one, yeah, okay, we can believe it is better for them to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. We can understand that. It's better to be a slave of someone sometimes than it is to just be dead, because at least you're breathing. Now, of course, some slavery, you might want it the other way around. But in their case, they said, we would rather be slaves than be dead. And they think they're going to die here. Here's the part I want you to check out, though. Right before that, they say, "Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians?" No, they didn't. They never said that to Moses. They never said, "We're happy here being slaves." They were making bricks without straw. They were being whipped on a daily basis. Their babies were being murdered by throwing them into the Nile River. The Egyptians were incredibly oppressive to them. And they never said, "Moses, would you just leave us alone? We're happy here." They never said that. They said, "Get us out of here." They prayed to God. They said, "God, would you get us out of here?" And He did. He sent Moses to them. And they got out. And now, while they're gone, they look back and they say, well, it wasn't really that bad. You know, I remember those hieroglyphics were kind of cool. And the Sphinx, that was neat. I bet someday people will pay money to see that. You know, what they're doing is they're doing something you and I do all the time. It's called nostalgia. Okay? Nostalgia is when you pretend the past was great because you know more about it than the future. You follow me on that? Nostalgia is when you go into the past in your mind and you remember some of the good things. And you drag them to the front and you say, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice to go back to those former days? To go back to those times? And I just can't believe they would do it. But then again, I'm guilty of it too. The summer before I got married, or the summer right after Jen and I got married, I was living in Peoria, Illinois, home of Caterpillar. Some of you have been in Peoria. Some of you know all about Peoria, and you know about the river area and how dirty and dank it was. And I moved away from Peoria to Denver, Colorado. Today I'm nostalgic about Denver. But when I moved to Denver, I was nostalgic about Peoria. And Jen and I would talk all afternoon about how fun it was living in Peoria. Last week I met a family that came here and visited us for the first time. And I said, where are you from? They said, Peoria. And I said, oh, really? And I was all happy and excited. And they said, yes, we're glad to be out of there. And I was like, Peoria's awesome. And then they got me thinking about the fact that it really wasn't. Why do we do that to ourselves? Why is it so hard to say goodbye anyway? Why is it so hard to say goodbye to things? Why does our heart and our mind draw us back to the things that we've said goodbye and keep us afraid of saying goodbye to the things in the future? You know, I do a little illustration sometimes in my premarital counseling. So some of you have seen this before. This is Silly Putty. It's a mega egg with Bart Simpson on the front. I do this little experiment kind of thing in premarital counseling. So if any of you are thinking about getting married, you've already got the punchline this morning, and I don't care if I'm giving you the punchline. But anyway, here you go. We're going to say this little ball right here that I'm going to make into a ball is you. Don't worry, I'll make it pretty. As pretty as Silly Putty gets. Okay, this little ball is going to be you. Okay? And I'm going to take another little ball here, and I'm going to say this is anything else in your life. Anything else. So this is like your car, your job, your sense of identity, your awareness of your own physical body. You know, maybe a sickness or something would come in and be the change in your physical body, but this is anything else. It could be a person. And then this is going to symbolize the relationship. Okay, just a little stick. When you meet someone, what happens is the relationship comes into play, and it joins the two of you. It's the thing that joins you to your car. It's the thing that joins you to other people. It's intangible. We don't know much about it, but it's there. But every time you have to say goodbye to a relationship, every time you have to say goodbye to a person, say for instance you lost a loved one to death, and you have to say goodbye to that person, the truth of the matter is, it's not just saying goodbye to the person, it's saying goodbye to the relationship. And you stay the same, and what happens is that relationship is left dangling there with nothing to connect to. It can never connect ever again to that same thing, because that thing is gone. And you're left with a part of your heart and soul wounded and ripped. It's because God has designed us for eternal relationship. And the parts of us that connect with other temporal earthly things connect just as deeply, just as personally as our connection to God. And when those things go, we're left dangling. We're left hanging. There's a part of us that's broken. Why is it so hard to say goodbye? Because every goodbye is like a death. Every goodbye is like when someone passes away. And there's a part of you that is left unattached. Well, I want to share with you something, though. If every change is a goodbye, I've got some good news for you. The good news is this: if we learn how to handle goodbyes, we will be able to handle any change we face. If we can learn how to handle a goodbye, we'll be able to handle any change we face. I'm going to give you a couple